Today we are going to learn the actual algorithm. So data science is done. So this week we will do a very interesting thing. So let me show the output first, then you will understand what we are going to do. So first we will talk about this Andrew graph. This is one of the beautiful representation and this is a very good analytical graph which is present in pandas and which is not very common. So I will talk about this Andrew graph. In the previous class I have talked about scatter plot and the histogram plot and the correlation analysis, everything. But today, instead of talking about the data, I will talk about a specific algorithms. This will be the outcome of this algorithm. See, we have four colors in this graph, and if you can see that we have one red color, green color, and blue color, and all those colors are representing three different kinds of flowers, and there is one black color which represents centroid. So, what kind of algorithm I'm going to talk about? It is known as K-means clustering. This is the first algorithm that you are going to learn in machine learning, and this K-means algorithm is one of the initial algorithm that was invented when the concept of unsupervised learning came. But nowadays it is so much significant in the recent research also, means in image processing or in image classification, we have plenty of application of this k-means clustering. So only knowing about this code and the syntax will not be enough. So we have to understand the underlying mechanism of this k-means clustering so that you could use it in the recent modern research also. So let's start with the class. So basically the code is very simple. I'm not going to explain the code today. Throughout this week, we will learn this entire algorithm. Now try to understand how this algorithm is a part of machine learning or how this algorithm is a part of artificial intelligence. So I will start from that. So now first we will talk about the origin. As we all know, artificial intelligence is being widely used around us, right? From reading the news on the mobile or analyzing the complex data at workplace, AI has enhanced the speed of precision. So here the point is try to understand why we are using this artificial intelligence concept, because we have to increase the speed and the precision of the complex data analyzing process. These are the main thing you have to remember. So the advancement in artificial intelligence have helped us to achieve things that we thought not possible before. Means even having a pizza from your favorite restaurant at home is just a click. Means by a click we can get what we want. This is possible due to the existence of AI. So simply put, artificial intelligence stands for a computer or a computer program that will imitate the human intelligence. I have already explained everything. Now as I have started this class with this concept, that is this clustering concept we have to achieve, and this clustering algorithm is known as k-means clustering algorithm. Now what category we will find this kind of classification in case of artificial intelligence and machine learning? So here the point is basically in AI or in machine learning you can say that we have four types of learning. So just like us, we have online mode, offline mode. These are the kind of learning we can prefer, or sometimes hybrid mode. So in case of artificial intelligence, here my point is the artificial intelligence stands for a computer or a computer program that imitates human intelligence. It is accomplished by learning, means how the human brain thinks, learn, decides, and works while solving a specific problem. So the outcome of this study are then used as a basis for developing intelligent software and systems. So you have to remember this thing carefully. That is, this learning is the only way by which our AI technology works. Means the only purpose of the AI technology is to imitate or is to find out how human brain thinks, learns and decides. So here, for achieving all the imitation that human brain can do, we will perform four kinds of learning. The first kind of learning is known as supervised learning. Then we have unsupervised learning. Then we have semi-supervised learning. And then we have reinforced learning. So, goal of this class is to learn a specific algorithm K-means. Now we have to find out this K-means algorithm comes under which category. Either it is a supervised learning or unsupervised learning, semi-supervised learning or reinforcement learning. But remember one thing, whenever in the interview it is asked that why learning mechanism is used, then there will be one answer. AI will imitate human behavior or the functionality of the human brain. And learning is the only mechanism by which AI can achieve this. And we are having this four kinds of learning mechanism. Now, I'm not going into the details, but I'm giving you some overview about this kind of learning. So first let's talk about supervised learning. So why it is supervised learning? See, we will use supervised learning when the model is getting trained on the labeled data. Now, what is the meaning of this labeled data? See, say this is our Irish dataset. I have explained that in case of Irish dataset, we will have four features and the last column here represents the class label or the type of the flower we have. So whenever in your dataset you have already defined the specific class that represents your data set, so this kind of column is known as class level, and whenever you are going to apply some algorithm on this kind of data set where the class level is present, it is known as supervised learning. Why it is supervised learning? See, whenever your teacher is taking your class, it means the teacher is the supervisor who is taking the responsibility of sharing the knowledge, right? So here also, since we know that if this kind of features are available, then it is the kind of setosa. If this kind of features are available, then it is a kind of versicolor. So specifically there is one label, this one is associated with each and every feature. So, whenever we perform this kind of learning where the class level is present, it is known as supervised learning. But unfortunately, for each and every data set, you will never get this kind of class level because in some of the data set, you have only the attribute information. The corresponding class level information is missing. So at that point of time, supervised learning is not possible. So at that point of time, we will go for the unsupervised learning. Now, in the real life, what is the example of unsupervised learning? Self-learning. So whenever, say, for a specific subject, your teacher is not present, right? Or expert is not present. So at that point of time, the only way is you have to learn by yourself. So this kind of situation is known as unsupervised learning. So basically my point is we will prefer to use unsupervised learning when the model is getting trained on an unlabeled data set. Means this portion is not present, right? And now it will become the responsibility of the algorithm to find the underlying pattern in the data. Now I'm giving you a clear overview about this unsupervised and supervised learning. That is, we know that this is our machine. The responsibility of this machine is to train itself, or the responsibility of the machine is to learn. And how this learning is possible? By training mechanism. So what is training? I will tell you. But remember one point, This training is only possible whenever you have data. Now, we have two kinds of data, labeled and unlabeled. So whenever we have labeled data set, then we know that what are the features available and the class level is present. Whenever we use this kind of data for training the model, then it is known as supervised. Otherwise, when this portion is absent, then it comes under the training of unsupervised learning. But try to understand how our machine will learn. So this is our machine. Our machine will use some algorithm so that it could learn. Now, for this algorithm, we need some input. So, input is your data, right? Now, for supervised learning, this algorithm has all the information about the feature and as well as the class level. So, there is no issue. Then algorithm will give us some output. But in case of unsupervised learning, try to understand this algorithm has the only information about the feature, no information about the class level. So at this point of time, this is the sole responsibility of the algorithm to understand the underlying data pattern and the behavior. Means what is this representation, actual meaning of this data, what pattern, what distribution this data set will follow. This thing this algorithm has to find out. So that's why I'm comparing unsupervised learning with the self learning. Say replace this algorithm with the concept of student. Say you are performing some self learning. Self learning means what? Whatever is written in the material, you have to understand the entire concept by your own. So this is why unsupervised learning is little bit difficult, because class level is not present. Then algorithm has to understand or has to explore each and everything from the data set by itself. And now I will give you the idea, that is the K-means clustering comes under the unsupervised learning mechanism. That is, whenever the class level is not present, then also this K-means algorithm will work. But you can ask me one question, that is, in our dataset we have the class level. So is it good to use K-means clustering at this point of time? So I will explain this one. So now the thing is, we have to understand the algorithm. How this K-means algorithm will work. Now, first let me define this algorithm. So what is this K-means clustering? First I will tell you the objective. So this K-means clustering tries to group similar items in the form of cluster. So this is the sole responsibility, grouping of similar things together as a cluster. So this is the main objective of K-means clustering. Now see here. The output of the K-means clustering means grouping of similar object, right? Similar means all red, all green, or blue. So here it is clear that we have three clusters, right? See, so this is how we could interpret our output. So I think we can now map the objective of the K-means clustering with the output. So since grouping of object is the only responsibility, but grouping of similar objects, so what it does, it will create one group for Setosa, it creates another group for versicolor, and it creates another group for Virginica. But here the question is how it is possible. Now come to the second part. So I am giving you one simple example so that you could understand the concept of cluster or grouping of similar object. So suppose you went to a vegetable shop to buy some vegetables. So there you will see different kinds of vegetable. So the one thing you will notice there is that the vegetables will be arranged in a group of their types. Means tomatoes will be in one group, chilies will be in another group, like this. So if you will notice, you will find that they are forming a group of cluster basically. So this is the basic concept of cluster. Now, if you ask me that, okay, what is the concept of k-means clustering over here? See, k-means clustering will follow three simple steps. The first step of this algorithm is we have to find out k values. So we have to understand what is this k values are all about. So selecting k values is the first step of this algorithm. The second step is we have to initialize centroid. So what is this centroid? See, whenever you visualize this output, we have three black dots, which is at the center of these clusters. So this center initialization is the biggest responsibility as a programmer that we have to perform. And the third step is we have to select the group and find the average. Now, this thing you have to understand. So here we have a simple concept of k-means clustering. Now let me explain this concept first. So basically, if you ask me this question that how could we understand our output is already clustered? So I will give you three shots. That is, say we have some specific graph where we have this kind of clusters. So green dots we are having like this. So if you apply k-means clustering on this graph, what you will get as a result, you will get three separate groups, 3, 2 or 1, it depends on the k value like this. So this is one group, this is another group, and say this is another group. So basically this is before k-means clustering and this is after k-means clustering. So here see all the colors are in green, but here all are in different colors. Means now k-means algorithm will able to understand what features are similar. So they will pick the similar objects together and create the clusters. So this is the concept of cluster. So now we have to understand the working principle of this k-means clustering, how this k-means clustering will work. First step I have discussed that selecting the k. Now you have to understand why we need to select the value of k. So here my point is select the number. So k is a number. So select the number k will help us to decide how many cluster will be present in the output. So in the output, we may have 3 cluster, 4 cluster. It depends on the programmer who is responsible for deciding the value k. 1, 2, 3, 4 like this. Now step number 2 is we have to select random k points, or it is also known as centroid. Means again the responsibility of centroid selection is the responsibility of the programmer. So you can say that it can be other form of the input data set. So this k points are selected from the input data set that you are having. Please try to understand this 2 point. The first k that you are selecting, it is just a number. You just assign the value of k value as 1, 2 or 3 or 4, anything. So it will decide how many groups you have in your graph. Now in the second case, you have to select the centroid. Centroid selection means whenever you have your data set, you have to pick some random input points like this. So this is our data set. So we have learned the slicing concept, right? So here centroid selection means say I want to select 3 centroid. So I will pick any 3 row like this. One, this one or this one. So any random value picking is known as centroid selection from the input dataset. So this is step number 2. Now come to step number 3. Assign each data point to their closest centroid. So here we have to assign data points. So this is the graph. We know that how many clusters will be there, it will be decided in step number 1. Then we will pick any 3 random value, because if we have 3 clusters, then there will be 3 centroids. So this will be also done. Now for the rest of the data value available in my input, we will assign each data point in any of the cluster depending on which is closest to the centroid. Basically, whenever I am checking that is this data will come under which cluster, so what I am doing, I am just measuring the distance between this data point and the cluster centroid. So whichever distance is less, I will think that this data point is close or similar to that specific cluster. Then I will assign this data point, right? So this is step number 3. Now in step number 4, we have to calculate the variance and we have to place a new centroid of each cluster. So again we have the responsibility of creating new centroid and we have the responsibility of the calculating variance. Now here the point is we have to repeat the third step, which means we have to reassign each data points to the new closest centroid cluster. So in my point is step number 5 means we have to repeat step number 3. So we have to check for each and every data value and we have to find out the distance which is closest to the centroid. And each time the centroid value will change because first we will fix up one random centroid, then in the second place we have to calculate the variance and again we have to recalculate the new centroid, then the centroid position will vary, then again we have to calculate what is the distance from the input to the centroid and then we will perform reassignment. So this is the 5th step. Now we have one 6th step also. So if any reassignment occurs, then we have to go to step 4. Say a particular dataset belongs to this center, but in the second case, when the centroid changes, so it is assigning to any other cluster. So when this reassignment occurs, then what we have to do, we have to again calculate the concept of variance. So if reassignment occurs, then we have to go to step number 4. So again we have to calculate the variance and again we have to calculate the new centroid. And then after this 6th step, at the 7th step, now we can say that our model is ready. So it seems like very simple algorithm. That is, first we have to find out the value of k, then we have to find out some random centroid, then we have to perform assignment of data. That is, we have to calculate the distance between the data and the centroid, then we have to calculate the variance, then we have to again recalculate the centroid. So we have to repeat this process. If any changes occur, then we have to again calculate the variance and the centroid. So this is how this algorithm works. But this is not as simple as you think. So there are lots of questions that exist in this algorithm. So the first question that I want to discuss today, how anyone can judge that what is the value of k? Because it is our responsibility as a programmer, that is we have to select the value of k. So this is the first point. And the second point, see, which is a strange point, that is we have to select the centroid. And here the only way is we have to select the random data points. So again, whenever randomness appears, we know that the accuracy of the model will also vary. So how this problem can be solved using K-means algorithm? And also there is another question, that is we have to calculate the distance from the centroid to the new data point. So which mechanism we will use for distance measurement? Is it fixed or we can use any other mechanism? So these are the very basic questions that we have to understand. So here I will try to solve first question, that is step number 1, that is how to find out the value of k. Then I can explain how it is working. See here, the first question that everybody asks, the question is how to choose the value of k. See, one of the most challenging tasks in this clustering algorithm is to choose the right value of k. So let's try to find one solution to this problem. Say if you are choosing the k values randomly, say this is my first option. So it might be correct or it might be wrong. We don't know. Say I'm choosing 2, you are choosing 3. I don't know which one is the correct one. So if you will choose the wrong value, then it will directly affect your model performance, right? Because our model is totally dependent on the algorithm. So if you choose the incorrect value of k, the model performance will hamper. So there are two methods by which you can select the right value of k. So the first solution is either I can follow elbow method or I can follow Silhouette method. So now we have to understand both the method clearly. So first let's talk about elbow method. So elbow is the most famous method by which you can select the right value of k and boost your model performance. So elbow model is preferably one of the favorite algorithm for the programmer because we know that it can boost our model performance. So we also perform hyperparameter tuning. This is another most important word that you will learn each and every day by this. So here my point is, if the question is asked why we prefer elbow method over randomly k selection, so I have two answers. It will boost my model performance and also it will perform hyperparameter tuning to choose the correct value of k. Means it will choose the correct value of k by using the concept of hyperparameter tuning. Now, what is this hyperparameter? How this tuning will perform? I will explain in details, but you have to understand one thing. In one word, elbow method uses hyperparameter tuning for selecting k. So that's why it is better than randomly selecting the value of k. Now, there is one word that is this elbow method is not a random selection method. We have got this. So what kind of method it is? It is a kind of empirical method to find out the best value of k. So what it does, it picks up the range of values. So the first step, it picks up range of values and takes the best value among them. And later on it calculates the sum of square of the points and then calculate the average distance. So we know that calculating average distance is very, very important because this is the only mechanism that the K-means algorithm is following. So what is the distance from the clusters? So this is the data point. If you have two clusters, so it will measure what is the distance of this data point from this two existing cluster. Whichever distance is less, it will prefer to include the data point into that cluster. It means for them, it looks like since the distance is less, so is this data point behavior is similar with this centroid. So assign it here. So that's why this method calculates the sum of the square of the points and calculates the average distance. So mathematically, I can see that when in the cluster, the sum of square, which can be represented by WCSS, that is within a cluster, sum of square, this WCSS will be calculated as, say, we have this number of clusters 1 to n. So it is Ci plus Xi whole square. So this is the basic formula. So it is calculating the sum of squares of the points, right? So how it is helping us to find out the value of k. This is the most important thing. So now let me explain by one specific diagram. Say we have a graph like this and we have some points. So now let's consider these 2 points. It is calculating the distance of this data point with all the available points. For this data points also, it will calculate all the square of the distance. So here my point is, here I am assuming that the cluster value is 1. See, we have only one cluster. So it will try to find out the distance between the data points. So when the value of k is 1, so what will happen? Observe here. The within cluster sum of square will be high. This thing you have to remember. So whenever I am talking about elbow method, I have explained that it is responsible for generating so many values and it will pick up the best. So if I start from the value of k is equal to 1, so remember one point, the WCSS code that I have explained right now, sum of square, this code will be high. So as the value of k increases, the within cluster sum of square value will decrease. This thing you have to note. So whenever we have a very low k value, WCSS code will be high. However, whenever the value of k increases, WCSS code will be decreased. So finally, we will plot the concept, means this kind of concept in case of elbow method. So we can say that if I want to plot this concept graphically, if this is k value and if this WCSS value, then you will find this kind of graph. Say it is 1, it is 2, it is 3, it's 4, 5, 6. So this concept can be best represented by this graph. So by seeing this WCSS value, this elbow method will try to find out the appropriate K value, right? Now come to the Silhouette method. So Silhouette method is somewhat completely different. So the elbow method also picks up the range of k values and draws the Silhouette graph. So basically it calculates the Silhouette coefficient of every point. So here elbow method is doing some another mechanism, but in Silhouette method it will use the concept of calculating coefficients. It is known as Silhouette coefficient. So for each and every point which are available, it will try to calculate the Silhouette coefficient. And it calculates then the average distance of the point within the cluster. So the average distance of the point to its next closest cluster will be calculated. So here I'm not explaining these two methods in details, but here you have to find out the difference. So in elbow method, what we are doing? We are finding WCSS score. That is the only thing we have. But in Silhouette method, we have to calculate the Silhouette coefficient. So in general, it will be depicted as S of I is equal to B of I minus A of I. So here larger of B of I and A of I. So now we have to understand what is this A of I. This A of I is the average distance inside the cluster. And what is this B of I? B of I is the average distance nearest other cluster. So this is the basic concept that we have to understand in the next day. What is this elbow method and what is this Silhouette method? But what is my intention today? The first hurdle in finding k-means clustering is the number of cluster, that is k. And how to find this k? Either you can choose random option or you can choose elbow method or you can choose Silhouette method. So if you use elbow method, so it will use WCSS formula, sum of square. And if you use Silhouette method, it will use to find out the Silhouette coefficient and then it will try to find out the correct value of k. So these are the only thing which are available to us, right? So this is the first step. Now if you ask me, okay, we have so many hurdles in k-means clustering, so why we are using it? So what is the advantage of using this algorithm? See, first thing is, it seems complex, but it is very easy to implement. Why? See, this is the code. We have a very small code and very easy to implement, and also the output, which clearly explains how many classes you have in your dataset. So this is the first advantage you will have, simple implementation. And the second point is this K-means clustering is scalable to a huge data set and also faster to a larger data set. Means see here we are dealing with data points. But whenever we are dealing with huge image, say whenever we are dealing with huge satellite image, so then the data points are very huge. So at that point of time, this algorithm is scalable to that kind of huge data set also. So this is the second advantage. And also there is one third advantage, that is it adapts a new example. Means always it will try to find out a new data points because centroids are changing, and it will always try to find out the distance from the point to the centroid, and it will continue this process until the situation converges, means until there is no change in the centroid. And also you can say that there is another advantage, that is generalization of cluster for different shapes and size. So see the clusters are not round over here in the output, right? So it can generalize the clusters for different shapes and size. So here the three cluster shapes are not equal, not similar kind of things. There also it is finding the appropriate class for the specific clusters, right? So these are the basic advantage of k-means clustering. But what are the disadvantages of k-means clustering? See, it is sensitive to outliers. I have explained in the previous day, whenever in our data point we have a very large value or very small value, so those are known as outliers. And the second disadvantage that I was talking about, choosing the k value manually is a very difficult job. So always we have to take help of other additional algorithms, ELBO method or Celote methods. And also as the number of dimension increases, the scalability decreases. See, here my data dimension is what? So we have four features here. So it's a very small data set, Irish. So whenever we have a large data set, so scalability of this algorithm also decreases. So these are the basic advantages and disadvantages that I was talking about, right? So here today I was just talking about the k-means clustering algorithm. Means just 4 points you have to remember. First, we are going to learn a specific algorithm, k-means clustering. Now we have to prove whether this algorithm comes under supervised learning or unsupervised learning. So we will check that one. And then third point is we have to find out what are the basic steps for this algorithm. So we have already discussed, but we know that now we have to learn how to find out the value of k, then we have to learn how to find out the value of the centroid, and then we have to learn the actual mechanism, how we can find out the distance between a point and the centroid. And then we have to understand how these clusters are made. But fortunately, I will tell you, this is just for theoretical aspect. But using Python, we don't have to think about everything. So this Python will take care of everything. But still, I will explain each and everything. Tomorrow, first I will explain each and every point about the coding. Then I will explain the outcome, and then I will tell you what are the internal mathematics, right? But one thing you have to remember, in case of learning machine learning algorithms, you have to understand the underlying mechanism. Otherwise, you will not be able to implement this algorithm for any other data set. So that's why the internal mechanism is very much useful.